welcome back to the Worship Team Podcast. My name is Alex Infiegin, and I'm your host today. If it's your first time ever listening, we wanted to say welcome and thank you for tuning in. Our podcast exists to help you as a worship leader or a worship team member be the best that you can possibly be, that you might better bless your local church. We really want to strengthen the local church across the globe, and it's been cool seeing people tune in from literally all over the world. Philippines, Russia, Canada. That's kind of another part of the world, right? Anyway, welcome. We are glad you're here. Today is episode 6, and today we are talking about something near and dear to my heart, which is playing in parts, arranging a song, learning how to play as part of a team, and really becoming more professional in our musicianship. The reason this is near and dear to my heart is because a lot of musicians in church don't have this mindset of playing in parts because they are either hobby musicians or they, took classical lessons growing up, and now they're thrown into a band context, and it's kind of a different situation. And the only real way to learn how to play in parts is either to grow up playing in bands all your life or to be someone who does musical recording, and you're literally building a song track by track, layer by layer, piece by piece, understanding how all the pieces fit together to create a cohesive whole. So that's what we're going to be talking about and hopefully teaching some of you today, is how to play in parts and really sound like a professional band. I'm going to be having this discussion with my good friend Brenton Collyer, just because he's a good guy to be around. Now, this podcast is slightly longer than our normal episodes, and I decided to keep it as one episode because I want to make it easy for you to share. Like if you're a worship leader and you want to share this material, I didn't want you to have to send 2 links to your team. I just wanted to keep it all in one place. So that's why it's a little longer, but I think it'll be worth your time. So enjoy this great discussion with Brenton Collyer, my good friend and fellow worship leader. Hey everybody, I am here with Brenton Collyer, my good friend and fellow worship leader. He's at Calvary Monterey, and I thought it would be great to have him on the episode today because he's wise and it's way more enjoyable when he's around. So,
thanks, man.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about playing in parts, really understanding how to arrange songs as a band. And before we talk about that, I thought it would be wise for us to kind of define what we mean when we say playing in parts, in the context of a band, or even in an orchestra or any sort of musical ensemble. What does it mean to play in parts? So I came up with this definition, and Brenton, you can pick it apart or tell me what you would add. Destroy it. So playing in parts is this. Playing in parts is assigning specific roles, melodies, and rhythms to each instrument that interact to create a beautiful and cohesive whole. I'm going to say it one more time, though. Playing in parts is assigning specific roles, melodies, and rhythms to each instrument that interact with each other to create a beautiful and cohesive whole. So
that sounds perfect. That kind of encapsulates all of the different components, I think, and I think if some of that doesn't quite make sense, the more we talk about it, that'll begin to make sense a little bit more. But I think you got it all in there. That sounds really good.
Okay, cool. Because I think a lot of churches, like if you walked into, the average medium to small church in America, you would probably show up and see a bunch of people on stage playing the same chords with the same rhythms and very little thought to arranging the songs and assigning specific parts.
Do you think that comes from the fact that most churches use like a chord chart style, where it's just the chord and then it's just up to speculation how you play that chord, what you do with it?
I think that's exactly the reason. It's like we give everybody a chord chart and they play the chords.
Right.
And it's not their fault. They're just doing what is on the piece of paper there.
But after this podcast, you have no excuse.
Right.
So.
Yeah, because really music can be so much more than playing the chords on the chord chart. I think playing chords on the chord chart is what you do when you're playing in your bedroom, or it's when you're leading by yourself and it's just you and your acoustic guitar, or just you and the piano. And in that case, you do need to play the chords. You need to cover the entire sonic spectrum. You need to be the rhythm, the melody, the harmony, all of it. You need to be everything. But when it's in the context of a band, you should not play the chords, or maybe, well, everybody should not play the chords. You need to cut back what you're playing and make space for the other instruments. And not just cut back, but also actually like play something different and complementary to what the other instruments are playing. And I think that's what we're talking about when we say we're playing in parts. It's playing something different and complementary to what the other instruments are playing. And we can talk specifics in a bit. Yeah,
and I think that's the difference between just hearing sounds that sound good, and hearing a song, hearing music. And, we want to honor the Lord by playing skillfully. And although someone in your church family might not know, they're playing parts, they'll be able to enjoy, kind of what you're doing. So
they'll feel the beauty of the music, the way that it's been arranged.
Yeah,
instead of just hearing everyone play G, D, E minor, C.
Right.
So when we think about music and a song and breaking it up into parts, one way I've heard it described is as a pie. And this guy that I recently heard on a podcast named Dave Dolphin describes the song as a pie, or the music, the sonic happenings as a whole pie. And then you cut that pie up and you give a slice to each band member. And so the more instruments and the more members in the band, the smaller slice of the pie they get. So meaning the more people on the stage, the less each person will have to play.
Yeah.
Or at least maybe not the less they'll have to play, but the simpler their part will have to be.
And the more conscious they'll need to be of the other people with them.
Totally. And the pie never gets bigger. You just have to cut the pieces smaller the more people you add to it.
That's good.
Yeah, thanks for that analogy, Dave Dolphin. And I mean,
that's a sweet name, by the way.
Oh yeah, super cool. I love that name. So if you listen to any album, you're gonna hear like multiple tracks, and each instrument is playing something specific. Maybe it's a specific drum beat, or a specific bass line, or a specific keyboard part. There might be like a tambourine that comes in on the bridge. And all good music is arranged in multiple layers with multiple parts working together to create a cohesive whole.
Yeah.
And I think we want that in our music ministry too. And so we have to move beyond just playing the chords on the chord chart and start playing parts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's going to make your music more interesting, more intricate, more moving, more powerful, and really more beautiful. And I think, last time we talked, Brenton, we talked a lot about like God being creative and excellent, and we want to represent him. And in this sense, God is a God of creativity, and we want to mirror him well by being creative with how we arrange our songs. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think for worship leaders and worship musicians, honestly, it's more fun. It's more enjoyable to be able to play songs that are just really cohesive and arranged well. And I think anyone that enjoys music, if they're willing to begin thinking in parts and working on parts, they're just naturally going to enjoy playing together like this more than just coming and pounding out the first thing that they think of, So it's really going to be a lot of fun, I think, if this is new for you.
Yeah, and it takes more work than just showing up and playing the chords, but the payoff is like way better.
Oh yeah.
For you and for your church, because people have to listen to you, by the way. So, okay, the first step to really beginning to play in parts is to start thinking in parts. So think in parts. So instead of saying, okay, I know the chords for the bridge. The chords for the bridge are G, D, E minor, C. You got to scratch that kind of thinking from your mind, and you need to start saying, my part for the bridge is this riff up on the neck at these frets, and I turn the overdrive pedal on for this part. of the bridge. That's what I do for the bridge, and I do it every time. So in other words, you figure out a specific part that you play for each section of the song, and you always play it the same.
Yeah.
So you have a specific part for each section of the song. You always play it the same. For example, if you're a piano player, on the first verse, I play this progression of notes on the piano. Notice I didn't say anything about chords. I play this little riff. Okay. In the chorus, I always play whole notes with the note change on each chord change. On the second verse, I play this repeated pattern up high on the keys, and on the final chorus, I change the patch on the keyboard to the organ sound, and I play something else. So you've assigned. You're not thinking about the song or the chords. You're thinking about, this is what I play in each section of the song. These specific lines, melodies, rhythms. You've assigned each section of the song something specific.
Yeah, and even just hearing you describe that, Alex, like, I just imagine that song just being so much more rich and so much more just enjoyable and pleasant and for both the player and the listener. And there are a lot of songs that have the same 4-chord progression, not just for the bridge, but sometimes even the whole entire song is the same 4 chords over and over again. So imagine as a keyboard player just playing those triads right in the middle register of your keyboard just over and over and over. There might be a time that's the right part for that song, but it could also be about the most boring thing you could play for that song too.
I'm just imagining the piano player pounding the chords for the entire 5-minute song. It's like, oh, kill me.
Yeah.
So I think thinking in parts means assigning a specific thing that you do to each section of the song.
That's huge. Each section, not the whole song, but each section of the song.
Right, and obviously all the parts that each band member is playing need to work in conjunction with the other instruments too, not just sound cool by themselves, and this takes foreplanning by the leader, because like if the keyboard part that you come up with is really jazzy and then the drummer comes up with the part that's all rock beat,
right?
So that's why you need a leader to like give direction and like, hey, this is what the song should sound like and this is where we're going, so I'm going to assign the parts to you guys as needed. So,
and a little word on that, if you're a worship team musician and you've taken some time to work out a part for a specific section of a specific song, you get to rehearsal, 5 other people join you, your worship leader's there, you get to that bridge, you play your part, you nail it, but your worship leader, who's listening to everyone all collectively, says, hey man, you know what, that didn't sound quite right, it was a little bit too up high in a high frequency or something. Hey, don't get your feelings hurt, it's okay. That's going to happen. It's up to the worship leader or the band arranger or the music director to be listening to everyone. So you've got to work on your parts, but also, be willing to change them, be willing to let them go too.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because you need to think of your worship leader as a producer. Like he's producing the song or she's producing the song, and they have something specific in mind that they're trying to accomplish, and what you're doing might not be adding to the whole. So if they tell you, hey, play something different, don't get your feelings hurt, just trust that their vision for the song is going to be awesome and you get to play a part in that vision. And that's an encouragement to worship leaders. Like if you're not thinking that way, time to start thinking that way, right? You got to start thinking of yourself as a producer of a live band and putting the parts together.
Can I throw in something here?
Yeah, totally.
Here's a little exercise for you if you're a worship leader, something that I really enjoy doing because I enjoy producing music and recording music, is get a good pair of headphones, where you can really, some good high quality headphones. Pick an album you really like. It could be a pretty simple instrumentation album or something with a lot going on, and just listen carefully through the whole song. Listen to how many guitars there are and how many different parts those guitars are playing and what different effects are on those guitars. And I think when we listen to music we enjoy, it just hits us and we enjoy it. But if you really listen with the producer's ear, you'll begin to hear all of these wonderful textures and layers. And that really, for me at least, sparks creativity and inspiration that I take to my band rehearsals. And it's just a lot of fun, and enjoying music in a little bit of a more specific way. So
yeah, that's super good. We're going to talk about learning to listen in a second, and so thank you for bringing that up. the last thing I think we need to talk about as far as thinking in parts, and this is what you're saying, is like if you learn to understand and listen, you'll understand about thinking in parts. And one thing that you guys need to think about is, how does my instrument help build the song? Like, the songs usually start and grow and climax at some point.
Yeah.
And so you have to think about your instrument and say, how does what I'm playing help build the song throughout? You know, maybe you need to add a new instrument at this section, or a new sound at this section, or a harmony comes in at this section, or change your part a little bit as the song progresses. Because each new texture and each new layer and each new part builds the song and hopefully takes it to a crescendo or a climax. And so you need to ask yourself, how does my instrument add to this section of the song and to the song as a whole? Like, does this part of the song even need me? Because sometimes, honestly, Brenton, sometimes the best thing a player can do is not play. Yeah. So that when you come in later, it really makes the song take off.
Oh, absolutely. I like to tell my band, like, hey, we don't want to play that card too many times, so to speak, or we don't want to throw down all our cards right away, so to speak. You know, you want to save some pieces to bring in, so that when that time comes, it's really impactful, really meaningful.
Yeah, and the way that I say to my band is, hey, don't give it away too soon. You know, like, we don't need to build that quickly. We don't need to add that part quite yet. It needs to come in on the last chorus, because it's going to take us there, you know. Yeah. So you had brought up listening, and I in the next way that people can grow in understanding their parts is learning to listen.
So I went against your rule and gave it away too soon. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Learn to listen. So a really, really good, if this is all new to you and you're like, hey, I've always just been a chord strummer, well, a really great way to learn how to build a song and how to play parts is to listen. So like Brenton said, go get your favorite song and put on a really good set of headphones and start to listen as closely as possible and analyze all the different things you're hearing, all the different parts, all the different melodies, what instruments are being played, the sounds that they're using, and start asking questions like, why does that chorus lift right there? Did a tambourine come in? Did an electric guitar come in? If it did, what is it playing? Why is that out chorus so catchy? Did a keyboard part come in? Is it playing? What's it playing? What kind of melody is it playing? Just start asking questions like, why does this part of the song, you know, make me feel the way that I feel? And then you'll start to analyze what the instruments are doing to make you feel that way. Yeah. Like, wait, why do the verses feel so mellow? Which instruments dropped out? Who's not playing right here? So start analyzing these things, and soon you'll learn really what makes current music work.
Yeah, and this is kind of a twofold exercise, I think, because you can do this as a worship leader just to really hone your listening skills and kind of inspire your creativity towards parts. But I also do this just when I'm preparing, especially a new song to bring to our team, and I'll take the map of the song, you know, verse, chorus, so on, and I'll make little notes for each section, you know, drums, bass, acoustic in verse 1. Chorus 1, add electric guitar, you know, hollow chorus, down chorus, or whatever. I'll go through the whole map and make some notes so that I'm rightly instructing my team as we're working through this song, and it's not all spur of the moment. It's like, hey, I like this arrangement. I don't have to reinvent the wheel here, so I'm going to see how this can kind of translate. So that would be a good, you know, thing to do just as a worship. Do you do that?
I do. I tell my band members when to come in and kind of what to play. I don't give super specific instructions, although sometimes I'll say play the melody line on the piano exactly as recorded in the album, or if I come up with my own, I'll record it for them ahead of time so that they can learn that part. Yeah. Because I don't want them to just have to guess.
Yeah. What about a song that has like 15 instruments and your band has 5?
Yeah, you got to pick the best, most key parts, right? Okay. Like, so if you're listening to Hillsong's version of Oceans or whatever, and there's like 50 different tracks, probably 100 tracks going on, each playing something different, subtle, you have to pick the key ones that are the most moving and that the people in the congregation are going to be used to hearing.
Yeah.
And you just need to pick that guitar line and that piano line.
Yeah, and the general dynamics of the song always translate. You know, the general, it's big here, it's soft here. I mean, you can mimic that, whatever your team looks like, I think.
Yeah, and you can also mix it up. Like next Sunday, I'm doing a version of Oceans that's nothing like the album. But we've come up with parts, and everyone's been assigned, like, this is what you play here, this is what you play here, this is the keyboard part, and we're going to play it, and hopefully it's great. And if it's not, then it's my fault. But at least we're trying to play in parts. But I think what Brenton's saying is really helpful. Another great way to learn how to play in parts is to learn it just like the album. Like, learn the part as recorded. And then you'll figure out, oh, that's how an electric guitar is supposed to be played.
Yeah.
Oh, that line works there, because it's not stepping on the vocal melody.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, these are professional, industry-leading producers and studio musicians who are crafting these parts for these recordings. I would listen,
Yeah.
It's worth at least learning that part. Whether it works in your context or not, well, you got to try to find out, but you may as well start there.
Yeah, and as you start listening and learning to like specific parts, you'll start to learn what works and what doesn't work, and then you can create your own. But you need to start listening and learning kind of from the best in the industry.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't record my songs and play my songs the way that the albums do most of the time, but if you're new to recording in parts and thinking in parts, then start there and go from there. Okay, so the next thing about playing in parts is to know your role. Know your role. So, like, for example, if you're a bass player, your role is to keep the foundation, be in the low frequency range. You don't need to be playing up on the high notes. Pianos, in the context of a band, you should stay out of the bass line. Electric guitars shouldn't be strumming like an acoustic guitar. Keyboard pad players should not be playing the keys like a classical piano. You have to know what your instrument's role is in the whole and stick in that. Because in the context of a band, you need to take your slice of the pie and not step into other people's roles and frequency ranges.
Yeah, and I think, and you might get to this in a moment, but a role generally for a bass stays consistent, generally for the drums stays consistent, and so on. But different songs call for different things, and I like to think of a song as either being electric guitar driven, acoustic guitar driven, piano driven, or kind of rhythm driven, so drums and bass. And so if it's acoustic guitar driven, they're playing the whole full chord, the rhythm of the chord. When everyone drops out, they stay in and carry the song. But then the very next song, the piano may be the instrument that drives the song. So they're playing a little bit more full.
Right.
And I like to really make that distinction when I'm leading with my team. And even I'll tell my sound guy, this is an electric guitar driven song. We want this hot, we want this present. But the very next song is we do a song that's very rhythm driven. And so the drum a whole verse goes by, it's just drums and bass and maybe like one strum on the guitar. It really carries the song. So know your role as it is in general, but also know your role as it pertains to that specific song, I think.
Yeah, and even know your role for certain parts of songs.
Yeah.
Because there are songs where I'll be like, this verse is like, drums and bass, you're the star of this moment. Like tom beat groove and a bass, like a straight eighth note bass line, you're the star of that moment. And then it might get down later in the song and it's like we break it down to a soft chorus and the piano is the star of that moment.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to know your role in the context of your instrument, of the context of a specific song, and then even in the context of like specific parts of songs, like who's the star of each moment.
Mm-hmm.
And something I want to say specifically to piano players, because most piano players who learn classically will kind of play everything because they're the only instrument, right? They're playing this classical piece. They're playing the rhythm, the bass, the melody, even the harmonies.
Yeah.
But when you start playing in a band, for those of you who are classically trained on the piano, you need to dramatically and drastically simplify. So like you remember the pie analogy. So when there's a bass player and a kick drum in the band, the low end rhythm is totally taken care of. So you can practically just sit on your left hand.
Yeah.
And honestly, you don't really need it, except for maybe occasionally playing some whole note octaves, like to outline the chord changes.
Yeah, or to add some extra emphasis or something.
Yeah, and even in modern music, especially if you listen to the piano or the keys, it's taken on a totally different function. It's now more about it plays the catchy riffs, it plays the hooks, it plays the simple melody lines that you remember later on, either that or the electric guitar. But it's now the piano, instead of being the whole instrument, the whole band, it's taken on a very narrow role, but an important role of playing the lead parts.
Yeah.
So if you're a piano player, start thinking that way.
That's good.
Okay, Brenton, I'd love for you to talk about playing complementary rhythms. You did a workshop at your church recently, and you did a really great job describing how multiple instruments should not all be playing the same rhythm at the same time. So can you kind of just tell us about playing complementary rhythms?
Sure. Yeah. So say there's a song that's in 4/4, and it's 120 BPM. Real standard. And the song starts off nice and upbeat, and the kick drum is just going 4 on the floor, boom, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's doing that and really, really setting the tone for the song. Perhaps the bass is doing that also, would be pretty common. But think about as a guitar player, perhaps acoustic guitar, you wouldn't want to also go if the first chord is an A, A, and then the electric guitar, A, and then the piano, A, you know what I mean? That's just going to get, you're just going to want to, like you said, shoot me now, it's too much, it's overwhelming. It might be the foundation of the song, but it doesn't have to be reinforced and reinforced. And so, a good exercise would be to play, okay, if the kick and the bass guitar are playing quarter notes, perhaps as an electric guitar player, you just play whole notes. So 1 strum per chord. Perhaps you've got some delay, some reverb that's going to really ring that chord out over the duration of the entire measure. As an acoustic guitar player, a lot of people right now kind of liken the acoustic guitar almost to a shaker. It's just got that underlying rhythmic, so they might be strumming instead of, A, they're just doing a strum pattern, so it's filling in, even doing some eighth notes in between there. As a piano player, you're not going to want to just pound. Perhaps you're doing something with some movement. It's not just a whole note or just quarter notes, but it's some type of riff that's floating. Floating over the rhythm. So it's a little bit hard to describe without hearing it, but hopefully you get the idea. And what I try to instruct my team is, hey, think about not just the part you're playing and where you're playing, but the rhythm in which you're playing. You might start on whole notes and then kick it into quarter notes for the chorus, and that's where thinking through each section is important as well. But take the rhythm, find what's best, try different things, don't be afraid to experiment, and listen to your worship leader. If he wants you to do something different, she wants you to do something different. If you are the worship leader, think about this. Think about the rhythm. It's not enough just to hit the right chord. You also want to play with the right rhythm and feel.
Yeah, and with each other.
Yeah.
And if, like Brenton said, if everyone's playing quarter notes, it's lame. Or if everyone's playing eighth notes, like that's cluttered and crazy.
Yeah.
So you assign, okay, the bass and the drums are going to play eighth notes, and the electric guitar is just going to strum, and let it ring. And what that does is those complementary rhythms are creating space for each other.
Yeah.
And that's really important in music, is creating that space.
Yeah.
So Brenton did a great job explaining. Just start thinking about it that way, especially if you're the worship leader and you're in charge of arranging stuff. So let me kind of just go back and say, start thinking in parts, start learning to listen, know your role, play complementary rhythms, and then the next thing about playing in parts that hopefully will be helpful to you is start using repeatable patterns. So play in repeatable patterns. Science has proven that our brains like music with patterns that repeat throughout. There's a study on it. It's really interesting. So
send that to me.
Yes, repeatable patterns are key to making music that people like. And if you listen to most popular music, top 40 pop radio, you'll notice that like everything is a really basic pattern. So like the kick is just like, the kick and snare will be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if there's a variation, it'll be like really small, and then it'll go back to the main pattern. And as the song goes along, to build the song in intensity, they just add to that basic pattern. They don't like change it drastically, like some weird, totally different kick pattern for the chorus. They just they might add a second kick, dun dun ka, right? So you keep the pattern the same, but you kind of add to it subtly as the song grows in intensity. They didn't create like a whole new pattern. So they just add extra hits or extra notes to the existing pattern. Or maybe they'll play the same pattern, like if it's a guitar part, they'll keep the pattern the same, but as the song builds in intensity, they'll play it up an octave higher.
Do you ever kind of experience some tension with that creatively? Like you want to do something different as an arranger, but you feel like it would forsake kind of your goal of leading your church and worship?
No, I actually love repeatable patterns. Like I would much rather have a simple, memorable, repeatable pattern piano line that is playing over the chords, than try to do some weird, crazy, jazzy. I mean, I know you like jazz, but
sorry.
But I'd rather keep it simple, because the non-musical folk in your church, they just need to like be able to feel the music and understand where it's going. But really, simple and repeatable. And honestly, like if it's a piano line, it only needs to be 2 or 3 or 4 notes. And it's a hook. And you need to think of it as like a repeatable pattern that is a hook. So for example, Mighty to Save has that piano line, da-da, or it's an electric guitar line. It's literally, it's 3 notes over and over, and then the chords are changing underneath it. So if you're a piano player or an electric guitar player, you want to find a pattern that uses 3 or 4 notes, that's repeatable. It doesn't have to be as simple as that example, but that can fit over the chord progressions underneath it, because there's something about that rhythm and that groove that it creates that makes you just kind of enter into that moment. So
can I throw in something there?
Yeah, totally.
And if you at your church, I know a lot of modern worship music is very electric guitar driven. It's actually moving a little bit away from that, it seems now. Some of it's going back to acoustic guitar. A lot of it's moving towards keys and synth stuff. But something that you could try if you don't have a terribly experienced lead electric guitar player that's just nailing these parts, is having the piano. You mentioned Mighty to Save, the piano line does this. Have the piano do the electric guitar part, or if you've got a keys player, perhaps they could have some type of a synth tone, on their keyboard, and have them do the electric guitar line. I'm an electric guitar player. I love electric guitar. I love worship electric guitar, but sometimes I get a little burnt out on it, and I want to hear something else. And so a lot of times I'll give my part to the keys player, say, hey, could you play that line? And that can really freshen up the song sometimes, I think.
Yeah, we don't typically have an electric guitar player at our church on Sundays. At this point in our growth as a team, we don't have an experienced one that I feel comfortable, putting up there. So the piano player does play all of those lines that you remember. For example, like Mighty to Save, da 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 da, or da 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 da. I think 1,000 times I fail. Your mercy.
No, Inside Out.
Inside Out. Thank you. So my piano players play those lines for me, and see how simple those lines are, but how catchy they are, and they work over the chords. That's what I'm talking about when I say repeatable patterns are powerful. So start thinking about your parts in that way.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't feel like I did a great job explaining it, but just start listening to modern music and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing about playing in parts is to keep it simple. Keep it simple. Because if everyone is playing a simple complementary part, when you put those simple parts together, then it makes a beautiful, cohesive, and intricate, well-crafted whole.
Yeah.
But if everyone is playing like random, chaotic, not simple parts, then it leads to this ugly, chaotic whole.
Yeah.
So keep it simple. And something I tell my team often is just because you have the ability to play something complicated doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Right? Just because you can play something doesn't mean you should play something.
Yeah.
So you really need to, like, this is so important. Play what the song needs, not what you want.
Ooh.
Sorry, I know that's going to hurt some feelings there, but play what the song needs, not what you want. Like, another way to say it is to serve the song.
Yeah.
You've heard that,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Serve the song. What does the song need? You don't need something elaborate. You don't need to do crazy drum beat. You don't need to play all over the keyboard. Sometimes, like, the simplest part is the best part.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I actually had a couple of thoughts on this, which you may mention, but I think this is especially difficult for skilled musicians, and especially for those who are like a keys player, a stringed instrument player like a violin or a cello, maybe a lead electric player who typically doesn't hold down the chords and they're more playing riffs, playing lines, lead lines and things. What I've discovered happens for some people, and they don't even realize it's really happening, especially if you've got good monitors. As you're just playing the song and you're feeling it and you're just loving it, the band can become your personal backtrack. And suddenly you are just playing what's in your heart and you're just jamming, and in your ears it sounds awesome. And you get caught up in this moment where, it's like, it does sound good, but it's not necessary and it's not serving the song, and it could really be distracting. And so I've actually told guys, like, hey, I'm sensing this is happening. You're just hearing, you've got everyone else kind of mixed a little bit lower. You got a good groove, a good rhythm, and you're just shredding over it. And but that's not what we need.
Yeah, it's not helping the song be what the song is called to be.
Yeah.
So it really is about serving the song and not your ego or your desire just to play.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I want to serve this song. I want to serve my church. And simplicity, because when you put all the simple parts together, it's a creative and cohesive whole. You have to learn to be okay with how your part fits into the whole and what you're contributing to the whole. Not what you're playing, but what are you contributing to the whole? And that's what you need to start thinking about. So an example of this is, so I lived in Russia for 2 years, and I met and married my wife there. And so we watched some Russian TV. And last week we were watching the Russian version of The Voice. And
The Voice is like in every country at this point.
It's called Golos.
Ooh.
Yes.
Do they have good singers there?
They have great singers there, yeah. And so I was watching for one song, the string section. I mean, these are like the best string players in Russia probably that they hired. Mm-hmm. And they're sitting there for the whole song. They're playing one note on the one count of each bar.
Wow.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Like that's all they played for the whole song. And you know what? It made the song awesome.
Yeah.
Like, because they were playing what the song needed, right? It didn't need any more than that, but it also didn't need any less than that.
Yeah.
And that's the exact part that the song needed, and so that's exactly what they played. So again, simpler, guys, is better. Play what the song needs, not what you want.
Or think of it this way: don't be afraid if your part is boring.
Yes.
I've been here. Maybe at the beginning of this conversation we said, think of a part for every section of every song. You may have begun to get overwhelmed. Like, I've got to come up with these masterful lines that are just... Sometimes the part is you strum one chord.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes, like you were describing with the strings, sometimes the part is a simple strum pattern. Sometimes the part is a simple, drum groove. And what I have to remember is when someone's worshiping God, enjoying the music we're leading, no one has got your guitar on solo with some headphones just listening to you and thinking, man, he's playing a really boring part,
Yeah.
No, but you are.
Yeah.
If in your monitor you probably got yourself turned up the loudest and you're thinking, man, this part is just so simple, but if it's what's right for the song, and more often than not it is, just you got to sacrifice that. Just do it. Just enjoy all that brain space that's freed up by playing the most basic thing. Worship God, join your team and enjoy it.
That's super good. So be bored is what Brenton said.
Yeah.
And the kind of a way that I put it to my team is to make each note count or make each hit count. Like if you're a drummer, like make sure it needs to be there.
Yeah.
And if it does, play it like you mean it.
Oh yeah.
Put your heart and soul into that note at that point in the song.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't need to be there, don't play it.
I know Eric Clapton's notorious for that concept. He's said that many times just in his guitar playing. So
well, great minds think alike.
Yeah, there you go, you and Eric.
So, and moving into a similar subject then of not being afraid to play boring stuff or not being afraid to not play. That's the next point. It's okay to not play.
What?
It's okay. Because if you play, like we talked about in the beginning, if you play your instrument for the whole song, it's boring, and you're actually robbing your instrument of its special moment to shine.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of adding something special to the song when it comes in, it's actually taking away from the whole song because you've just been strumming and droning on the whole time. Because, like, if you listen to some albums, there will be an electric guitar that comes in on the last chorus, and all it does is it strums these huge whole notes. Like right when that last chorus comes in, you're wondering, dang, why does that chorus lift so much? It's because that guy sat out for the whole song, and then he came in when it needed to come in, and it's like, oh man. But he was patient to not play when he didn't need to be playing. Right. So David Santasteven, who actually kind of inspired me to start this podcast, he's a great blogger and a great podcaster. If you don't know his stuff, like, you need to get on it. Just Google for Beyond Sunday podcast. He's amazing. He wrote an article recently, and he said, a great musician is always more aware of other musicians than himself.
Wow.
His only place is within the pocket of what the rest of the band is creating. He listens more than he plays. He adds only when it contributes to the feel.
Love it.
Thank you, David Santasteven. That article is amazing. Everybody should go to his blog as of January 2015 and check it out. I can't remember what it's called, but something about something all great musicians do. But that article talks a lot about what we're talking about here.
And that's really the difference between a player and a real strong kind of professional level player. Lots of people can play. Not a lot of people can listen and wait, and that really makes the difference, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people can play, and not a lot of people know when they should play.
Yeah.
Or what to play.
Well said.
Yeah, they're listening to the context of the whole song, and they're saying, do I need to be in here? Nope. I should come in here, and they know what to play at that moment.
Yeah.
And you're right, that's what makes a good musician versus a mediocre musician.
Yeah.
So, okay, that was a lot of content, and I don't want to keep everybody here too long. There's not really anything else we want to cover, but I do want to just kind of go through the main points again. One is start thinking in parts, okay? Just start thinking in a new paradigm. 2 is start learning to listen. Go and listen to your favorite bands, favorite albums, and just pick apart and analyze what they're doing and why each section of the song feels the way it does. The 3rd thing is know your role, know what your instrument is capable of doing and what it should be doing, and don't try to do what other instruments are made to do. Play complementary rhythms, so that you're not all doing the same thing. Think in repeatable patterns because they're powerful and catchy, and they help add layers and textures to your music. And then keep it simple. Don't be too busy, because there's a lot of you. Make sure your slice of the pie is small, and then be okay with not playing. The only other thing I would really add is just like give it space, let the song breathe, and just enjoy the music. Let the song be what it's called to be. Have a vision for it. And if your worship leader doesn't have a vision for it, ask them, and maybe they can start thinking about that. So, any concluding thoughts, my friend?
Man, all of that is so good, and I'm just excited for the worship leaders, the worship musicians who are going to listen to this podcast and take this and start implementing it. I mean, it's just it will make an immediate difference in your team, and so this is great. Thanks for doing this, Alex.
Yeah, thanks for being with me. All right, everybody, thank you, and we will talk to you soon. All right, some super helpful and practical stuff there for you and your team. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with people you think it might be useful to, whether that's your team members, maybe it's your worship leader, maybe it's the worship leader down the road. Just share this content so that more churches can be blessed by it. And we would love for you to leave a 5-star review for us on iTunes. It would take you about 35 seconds to do that. That would be super helpful for us to get the content into more people's ears and minds and hearts. And also, if you want to connect with us on Twitter, it's @worshipteampod, @worshipteampod, P-O-D. All right. Well, God bless you this week as you lead worship and lead your church to focus and fix their hearts and minds on Christ and sing to Him loudly and gladly and boldly. God bless you, and we will be back with another episode soon.
So won't you carry me on? Won't you carry me